Hello, everybody, and welcome to NBA TV Basketballography. I'm Andre Aldridge. In today's NBA, the sixth man is an important element of a coach's strategy. The first player off the bench is counted upon to add some scoring punch or a much-needed burst of energy. Now, since 1983, the top sixth man in the league has been recognized with a postseason award. But back in the early 1950s, the sixth man was a foreign concept. That is, until the arrival of Frank Ramsey. Playing for Hall of Fame coach Adolph Rupp, Ramsey helped lead the University of Kentucky to a national championship in 1951 and an undefeated season in '54. But even before his college career was over, he was drafted by the crafty coach of the Boston Celtics, Red Auerbach. Now, Ramsey would go on to help revolutionize the game, but at the time, he was hardly overwhelmed by the prospect of joining the NBA.
Somebody called me and said you were drafted, but I didn't even know what it was because basketball in Kentucky was high school and college. And the pros in the early 50s were just getting started. And they said, what do you think about it? I said, well, I really don't know what to think about it. I've got 2 years to serve in the Army, and I'm going to come back to college. During that summer, Red called me over, and he says, hey, Frank, about playing next year. I said, Red, I don't think I can. I've got to go to the Army. I'm supposed to report such and such time. He said, well, can you get a deferment? I said, I don't know. He said, well, what do you take to play? And I said, I don't know. And he offered me something. I said, I think he offered me something like $7, and I won. And anyway, I settled, I think, for $8,000 I'd play if I could get a deferment. And I did get a deferment and played a year, and then I went into service. And that's the only time I've ever taught contract in my life.
26-25 in favor of Minneapolis at the quarter. Branham into McCauley, out to Ramsey, and we're in a good spot to watch him shoot. That ex-Kentucky star is quite a rookie.
At that time in the early 50s, you know, basketball was not the hottest thing in the world. And then the Celtics we'd really never heard of. Boston Garden was old then. We're talking about the 50s, and our dressing room was about 10 by 10. We had one shower head and one commode for all of us. You had nails. Everybody had 2 nails they could hang their clothes on. You didn't have coat hangers. Boston Garden, it was home to us, and we knew the floor. And you had really a lot of dead spots on it, but I would say we did have a distinct advantage playing in Boston. We had no whirlpool. We had to tape our own ankles. And when you went to play, you played in a skating rink, you played in a small gym, and the crowds might be 2,000 or 3,000. Kentucky, we had 11,000 there all the time. The travel, we traveled by car, we traveled by train. We were flying DC-3s. You know, they had 21 people that could fly on it, and man, you got sick all the time.
Ramsey takes it down fast.
But Ramsey adjusted to life as a pro and soon established himself in the role that would define his career and forever change the way the game would be played. Coming off the bench as Celtics coach Red Auerbach's first substitute, and in the process, inadvertently becoming the NBA's original sixth man.
I don't know how it evolved, except I was playing guard at the time, and I was behind 2 all-star guards, Cousy and Sharman. And I really wasn't big enough to be a full-time forward. I could play either position, so I was very content with that, because when you sit down on the bench, you can see how the flow of the game's going. You can see who maybe is limping a little bit, you can see who might be hurt, and get a drink of water.
Ramsey and the Celtics had the perfect basketball marriage. When Boston needed a quick spark, they could always count on number 23 to fill just about any need.
Red chose to use me that way. There was no conscious effort of me doing it. I would just be the first substitute that went in, and I normally didn't go in as a guard. I went in for Heinsohn, because at that time Heinsohn was a 2-pack a day man on cigarettes, and he couldn't go full steam but about 8 minutes. So Red would substitute me for Heinsohn. Well, at that time, a bigger man would be guarding me, and I could outrun him. Cousy would get me the ball. And this was something that was not planned. It evolved, and I'm very happy to be mentioned in that role, but I don't think it was planned. It just happened, and caught on, and then I guess everybody said they had to have a sixth man.
Ramsey's unique contributions allowed him to become woven into the fabric of the Celtics. He was not only indispensable as a key weapon in the Boston arsenal, but he came to be relied upon as much as any starting player.
If you ran, Coos would get you the ball. The team would get you the ball if you were open, and I was a fair shot. Normally, if I was a guard at that time, I was bigger than the person that like Slater Martin. I was bigger than Slater Martin. I can't think who, I was as big as Frank Selvey was a guard. Dick McGuire, I was as big as Dick McGuire or bigger. Bobby Davies, Bobby Wanzer. So I could rebound over them. And if a forward, if I was playing forward, then I had a bigger man that was chasing me that normally wasn't as fast as I was. So I guess everything just fit together for me to fit in with the Celtics. Thank goodness.
Over the span of his 9-season NBA career, Ramsey played for just one team, the Celtics, and one coach, the father of the sixth-man concept, the legendary Arnold "Red" Auerbach, a New York native who reminded Ramsey of his old Kentucky home.
Red was about like Coach Rupp. He was a dictator. He'd listen to you, but he'd make the final decision. And he always played the odds. That's the thing I remember about Red, was he played the odds. It's like today, if a left-handed hitter's coming up, you want a left-handed pitcher against him, even though the other pitcher's only pitched to one man, because the odds are he won't hit a left-handed pitcher as well as hits a right-handed pitcher. Well, Red was that same way. The odds were you fouled the guy that was the worst foul shooter. That's what I mean by the odds, and I learned that from Red. When we were out of shape when we came back to Red on September the 15th, we would practice for 2 weeks. Red would try to kill us.
We have a rigid preseason training period.
2 times a day, and these practices were brutal. I know Willie Knowles joined us, and we were kind of old, and we were doing push-ups. And Willie was trying to get in shape, and we knew Red was trying to kill us. And Willie did a push-up, threw up, and fell right down there. Russell just laughed, grabbed his feet, and pulled him off the court, and you know, it went all over in his face and everything. But anyway, we would practice twice a day for 2 weeks, and then we would get in cars and take off up through Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, and western Massachusetts, and play 14 games in 14 days. And we would have another team that went with us. One year it'd be the Minneapolis Lakers, and we would play them every day, every night for 14 days. We all listened to whatever Red said. You know, sometimes he'd say, well, what do we do now? Well, everybody would give an opinion, and then he would say, all right, we'll do this. And when I first joined the team, you had a lot of GIs on there that were used to taking orders. There was no scouting combine or anything then. He had a bunch of people he was in the service with and knew all over the country, and he would call and ask them about different players. And he was more interested in their personalities, I think, and their desire to win than he was maybe in their ability to play basketball, but they all could play. He would draft you, and you would normally stay with the team for a lifetime. He's only been wrong on one that I know of. He drafted a gentleman by the name of Green one year, number 1, I think it was the late 50s, and came up, we went through training camp and got ready to go on our first trip, found out he didn't fly. he would only go on the train or a car, so naturally Red couldn't keep him. And that's the only one that I know he's ever been wrong on. Red put on an air about him of gruffness. He wasn't. He was the nicest person in the world. I know that we used to play one game a year in Washington, D.C. or University of Maryland. And after the game, we would go to his house. It was on Legation Avenue, I think, and he would have hors d'oeuvres. And there, Red was the host. I mean, he passed the plate with the sandwiches on them, and he was a completely different person than the media would build him up to be. You know, gruff, cigars, and all the thing. Red was really nice, but you couldn't get him in a crowd. One-on-one, he was wonderful.
But what wasn't so wonderful for Boston opponents was one of Auerbach's trademark practices, lighting up a cigar before a game was over. It was a not-so-subtle reminder that the Celtics were about to claim another victory.
I think it was Freddie Schaus say, all I want to do is go over and stuff that cigar right down Red's throat. I never wanted him to do it and then us get beat. Red, we don't have it won yet, don't do it, wait a few more minutes. I was glad for him to do it because it's like, you know, the game's over. But don't do it while there's still a chance they can catch us. And that cigar, when we'd go in our dressing rooms, our dressing room was about 10 by 10 at the half. Heinsohn was a 2-cigarette man at the half. Red had that cigar going, and we had a couple of other smokers in there. And you had to actually, like, take a knife and cut the smoke away so he could sit across from you. That was the stinkiest place that I've ever been in at the half. And it was hot in there, oh my goodness. But Red and his cigars, I said, Red, I said, you only took 3 puffs off that cigar. I said, that's a quarter cigar. He said, Frank, let me tell you. He says, I don't drink. And he said, if I stop for a drink on the way home, it cost me $1.50 to $2. He said, I can have 6 cigars for that one drink, so I don't mind wasting them.
When Frank Ramsey began his second season with the Celtics in 1956, the team was still searching for a winning formula. Since joining the NBA 10 years earlier, Boston had not yet won a league or even a division title. But Red Auerbach worked his magic again, and in December of that year, another of his savvy draft picks joined the team. William Felton Russell would become the linchpin of a dynasty in the making.
We weren't a good rebounding team. And then once that he got Russell, that was the piece of the puzzle that where the Celtics took off.
Russell blocks, fouls the 10th, and Heinsohn rebounds.
Russ changed the game with his defense and his rebounding. See, he could cover up for me. I could play forward. I was only 6'4", because if I'd block my man off, he could get the rebound. His presence in a game affected players, and he wasn't even around them. It had to do with his ability to block the shots. You were always looking over your shoulder to see where Russell was before you took his shot, so you couldn't concentrate as well as you would if you know, somebody else besides Bill was guarding you. That's just the way Russell affected the game and allowed us to play a game, a running game. You have to realize with that team, he didn't have to score. Chamberlain with Philadelphia, he had to score. Russell did not have to score. You had Cousy and Charman. You had Tommy Heinsohn. I like to shoot. You had Luskatov. And you had plenty of scores, but we had to get the ball. Russell took no prisoners. You know, if I'd been playing against him or his brother, he had a brother that played some basketball, you're an enemy and he's going to do everything he can to beat you.
His one-hander rims the basket, and down comes Ramsey with a 3-on-2.
With the addition of Russell and Rookie of the Year Tommy Heinsohn, Boston downed the St. Louis Hawks in 7 games and won its first league championship. But it was not until 2 seasons later that Bill Russell faced his biggest individual challenge, dueling the larger-than-life Wilt Chamberlain in legendary battles that captured the imagination of the basketball world.
That rivalry, it's like during the 80s you had Magic and Bird. That rivalry almost saved the NBA back then, because they would schedule all of the doubleheaders they could in New York City to sell out the Garden. When we would play Philadelphia, and then the Knicks would play the second game and half the Garden would leave. Half the fans would leave. But that rivalry, you had to have 4 other guys on the court, but everybody was watching Russell and Wilt. You know, I'd sit on the bench and I marveled at what they were doing.
In 1959, the Celtics defeated the Minneapolis Lakers in 4 straight games to capture their 2nd title in 3 years. But the superstitious Ramsey suffered through some anxious moments before the sweep was complete.
Bob Leonard misses and Ramsey rebounds. Frank's all-around play has been terrific.
I thought Cousy had jinxed us. We had won 3 in a row, and Coos had reservations to go to Florida. And he upped the reservations to 2 days, and I says, Coos, you jinxed us. I said, we're going to lose the game because you moved it up, and if we lose, we got to play after that. I said, that's a jinx. Well, it wasn't a jinx. We won it, and that's the thing I remember. I thought that we had been jinxed.
In 1962, another rookie joined the Celtics, and Ramsey took him under his wing. Ramsey, of course, had no way of knowing that he was training his replacement, a player who would become Boston's all-time leading scorer and the NBA's next great 6th man, John Havlicek.
And I played 2 years with John, and when John first joined the Celtics, he wouldn't shoot. So we had to really say, John, take the shot if you're open. He didn't have the confidence. You know, he was a rookie, and here he was playing with Sam, Casey, Cousy, and they're all in the Hall of Fame, playing with Heinsohn, Russell. So we had to get him up, and he got his confidence up, and the rest is history.
Frank Ramsey was never part of an NBA All-Star roster, but he played on 7 Celtics championship teams and was enshrined in the Basketball Hall of Fame in 1982. He was an invaluable member of a Boston dynasty that came to symbolize consistent excellence.
Back to Ramsey. It's in there.
We were together for a long time. You know, we weren't traded. We were drafted, and we stayed there. And I think that's what contributed to a whole lot of our success. We knew each other. We knew what the other player could do. In other words, we knew what to expect from everybody. If you got down the floor and were open, you knew you would get the ball. We did not play a selfish game. In other words, we weren't concerned. I never did know what anybody else made in playing the game. Once I signed a contract, I never cared what anybody else made if I was happy.
Here's the tap-off for the 2nd half. Cousy has it for Boston. On to McCauley. Into Ramsey, who fires to Sharman under the basket. Nice going.
Red made it very clear to us that what our scoring average was did not affect how valuable we were to the team. There was no jealousy, and if you were open, you got the ball, and you knew you would get the ball, and so everybody hustled. There's been a book written called Type A Personalities. We were probably all Type A personalities. If you look at the players he had, they've all been coaches. Cousy, Sharman, Russell, Heinsohn, Casey, Satch, me, Leskatov. And I guess they were self-motivating, and they wanted to win. They had the desire to win. We all got along. Red was a dictator, but we knew that he had the right to trade us at any time. But we did get along as a team. We were together so much, you'd figure that a flight from Boston to St. Louis one time took 8 hours on a Constellation. And we didn't get off the plane. We had to go in a hangar and get the ice off of it one time in Cleveland. But I guess maybe the personalities that he drafted, he checked into how they got along with people. Almost all of us had been through the service. Casey, Sam, Jack Nichols, I think Barksdale, Bob Branham, Leskatov, Sharman. We had all been in the service and used to taking orders. So that could have had something to do with the type of team we had. But we did get along, and that's a tribute to Red, I think. And of course, we had a wonderful owner in Walter Brown. I saw the Celtic yearbook, and I think they had something like 40 people working in the office. When we were there, we had Walter Brown was president. He just signed the checks. Red ran it, and you had Howie McHugh and Bill Mocrae in the publicity department. Now, that was the whole Celtic organization back then. I know that after that first year that I talked contract with Red, I never talked contract again. I would sign a contract when I'd come back to Kentucky, leave with Mr. Brown, and tell his secretary when he gets around to me, I've already signed it, just tell him something, send it to me. There was one time he didn't have the money to pay us our playoff money until the following year. And nobody worried about it at all. We knew if Walter Brown said he'd pay it later, he would. He was a man of his word. He had a lot of integrity. We got one ring. The first time you won it, you got a ring. There was not a whole lot of money, and the winning team bought the rings. The league didn't buy it. I had one ring. But after that, we would get little pendants that had a shamrock on it. At that time, a winning share was only about $3,600. And had we lost, we got something like $300 or $400. Had you lost the first round, the next round you got maybe $1,200. The next round, if you lost, you got $1,800. But if you won it all, you got about $3,600. And that was a whole lot of money because most of us were making in the teens.
Sam Jones across the line. On to Ramsey, into Russell, and watch Ramsey set up a nice screen for Sam Jones, who races up the side.
At the time we were winning those championships, it was year after year. You didn't think anything about it. We thought we were supposed to do it.
Is Boston setting up the toughest team in basketball?
Now it seems that people compare today's teams with what we did as a pro team.
Into Russell, who gives to Ramsey for the score.
And it's very gratifying to think I was part of that. And to think of the people that I associated with are icons of the game of basketball. Coaches, players, owners. And to me, as I grow older, it means more than it did when it was happening. You know, at that time, you're worried about kids. You got kids, you got whooping cough, you got to go to grocery. You're worried about all the mundane things that happen every day in life. And now you look back on it and think, you know, what we did was exceptional. And I'm just glad I was able to be a part of it.
Bad knees forced Ramsey to retire after the 1964 season at the age of 32. He was offered a job as a Celtics assistant coach and was even discussed as an eventual successor to Red Auerbach. But Ramsey had other plans. He returned to his roots in small-town Kentucky, running a farm, a construction company, and becoming president of the only bank in Dixon, Kentucky, population 350. He did make a brief return to basketball, coaching the Kentucky Colonels of the ABA in the 1970-71 season, but he soon went back to his quiet life in rural Kentucky to tend to his business interests and raise a family. That's all the time we have for today's show. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on NBA TV Basketballography.